In a bold standoff at sea, the Philippines' largest Coast Guard vessel, the BRP Teresa Magbanua, stood firm against the persistent and illegal presence of Chinese Coast Guard ships intruding into Manila's sovereign waters. The scene unfolded along the coastline of Zambales province, some 70 to 80 nautical miles from shore, where the Teresa Magbanua vigilantly monitored the unsettling movements of Chinese vessels that dared to disrupt the peace of Philippine waters. Among them was China's behemoth Coast Guard ship, ominously nicknamed the Monster, the largest of its kind. Over the weekend, this 165-meter-long giant reappeared in the West Philippine Sea, raising tensions as it sought to assert Beijing's controversial claims. This maneuver was part of what many believe to be a calculated strategy by China to normalize its military presence and alter the region's fragile status quo. But the Philippine Coast Guard wasn't backing down. Just days prior, a smaller Chinese ship, identified by Bow number 3304, had been attempting to assert control in the area. However, thanks to the relentless efforts of the BRP Teresa Magbanua, the Chinese vessel was gradually pushed further away from the Zambales coastline. Unwilling to cede ground, China responded by sending in their colossal patrol vessel, CCG 5901, in a high-stakes attempt to outmatch the Philippines' 97-meter-long Coast Guard ship. What followed was nothing short of a maritime chess match. The Teresa Magbanua skillfully approached the massive 12,000-ton Chinese ship on its starboard side, blocking its path and preventing it from advancing toward the Zambales coastline. This strategic maneuver sent a clear message: the Philippines would not be intimidated, no matter the size or firepower of the opposition. Throughout the encounter, the Philippine Coast Guard maintained a firm and professional stance, repeatedly broadcasting radio messages to the Chinese crew. Each transmission was a pointed reminder that they were operating unlawfully within the Philippines' exclusive economic zone and lacked any legal authority to patrol these waters. As tensions brewed in the West Philippine Sea, a powerful ally arrived on Philippine shores, the Vinson Carrier Strike Group, spearheaded by the mighty USS Carl Vinson, CVN-70, a Nimitz-class aircraft carrier. The strike group's presence sent a resounding signal of support amidst growing territorial challenges. The carrier, along with its carrier air wing, CBW-2, the Ticonderoga-class guided missile cruiser, USS Princeton, CG-59, and Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, USS Kidd, DDG-100, and USS Sterett, DDG-104, docked in the Philippines for a scheduled port visit on January 5th, right as China's colossal Monster ship made its unwelcome presence felt in Philippine waters. This high-profile visit is more than just a stopover. It's a powerful demonstration of the enduring U.S. Philippine alliance and the United States' broader commitment to a free and open Indo-Pacific. For over 7 decades, the partnership between these two nations has stood strong, anchored by shared democratic values, close cultural ties, and a mutual determination to safeguard regional peace and prosperity. Rear Admiral Carlos Sardiella, commander of CSG-1, emphasized this bond, calling the U.S. and the Philippines steadfast friends, partners in prosperity, and ironclad allies. The Vinson Carrier Strike Group's arrival comes at a crucial time, just as China's massive 165-meter Coast Guard ship continued its illegal patrols near Scarborough Shoal, well within the Philippines' exclusive economic zone, EEZ. The U.S. Navy's presence underscored its resolve to challenge Beijing's claims over the South China Sea. Operating under the U.S. 7th Fleet, the Navy's largest forward-deployed numbered fleet, CSG-1 is a versatile force capable of everything from combat missions to humanitarian aid, always prepared to uphold international law and regional stability. This visit wasn't just about diplomacy. It also fortified relationships with local leaders and communities. The port call reaffirmed the Philippines' critical role as America's oldest treaty ally in East Asia, with both nations working hand in hand to ensure the Indo-Pacific remains peaceful and secure. Meanwhile, The Philippine Coast Guard, PCG, was holding its own on the front lines. The crew of the BRP Teresa Magbanua, undeterred by the presence of China's monster ship, persistently radio-challenged the Chinese vessels, declaring their operations illegal under international law. They cited the Philippine Maritime Zones Act, Republic Act 12064, the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS, and the 2016 Arbitral Award, which upheld the Philippines' territorial rights. Over the radio, the PCG crew made it clear the Chinese Coast Guard had no legal authority to patrol these waters and was ordered to leave immediately. Each message was a bold assertion of sovereignty, underscoring the Philippines' determination to protect its maritime domain against any unlawful encroachment. The BRP Teresa Magbanua, MRRV 9701, one of the Philippine Coast Guard's largest vessels, remains steadfast in its mission near Zambales, where the Chinese Coast Guard vessel 3304 continues its illegal presence, roughly 70 to 80 nautical miles from the shoreline. This deployment isn't just another routine patrol, it's a resolute stand by the Philippines against Beijing's creeping claims over its waters. Under the Philippine government's directive, the BRP Teresa Magbanua is on the front lines, actively countering China's attempts to normalize and legitimize its unlawful operations. Its presence sends a clear message: these waters belong to the Philippines. Beyond safeguarding the nation's sovereignty, the ship is a guardian for Filipino fishermen, ensuring they can work without fear of harassment or intimidation. By maintaining this vigilant watch, the PCG demonstrates its commitment to upholding maritime law while exercising restraint and avoiding provocation. The stakes grew higher recently as China deployed its monstrous Coast Guard vessel 5901, dubbed the Monster for its sheer size and power, into Philippine waters. This vessel, a towering 12,000-ton behemoth, represents the pinnacle of Beijing's maritime aggression. On Saturday, January 5, 2025, the Philippine Coast Guard took decisive action, dispatching the BRP Cabra, MRRV 4409, alongside a helicopter and a surveillance aircraft to challenge the Monster, detected just 54 nautical miles from Capone's Island. In a tense standoff, the PCG firmly radioed its warnings, declaring the Chinese vessel's presence a violation of the Philippines' Exclusive Economic Zone, EEZ. This response wasn't just about upholding international law, it was a defense of the livelihood and safety of Filipino fishermen. Commodore J. Tariela emphasized that protecting these waters is a top priority, and the Philippine Coast Guard is committed to preventing any intimidation within its EEZ. The monster ship's presence near Panatag Shoal, known internationally as Scarborough Shoal and claimed by China as Wangyan Dao, is particularly alarming. Located just 120 nautical miles from the Philippine mainland, the shoal lies well within the 200 nautical mile EEZ granted under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS. For comparison, the shoal is almost 500 nautical miles from China's nearest coast, making its claims all the more baseless. This brazen incursion by China is part of a larger strategy, a calculated effort to rewrite the rules of the West Philippine Sea. Since the landmark 2016 Arbitral Tribunal ruling, which invalidated Beijing's 9-line claims, China has consistently flouted international law. Deploying massive Coast Guard ships and maritime militias, it seeks to intimidate neighboring nations, disrupt the livelihoods of local fishermen, and assert unlawful control over contested waters. The Philippines, however, isn't backing down. The deployment of vessels like the BRP Teresa Magbanua symbolizes the nation's resolve to uphold its sovereign rights. It's a fight not just for territorial integrity, but for the dignity and livelihoods of every Filipino dependent on these waters. In May 2024, the tension in the West Philippine Sea escalated once again. China's massive Coast Guard vessel was spotted just 50 nautical miles off Panatag Shoal. The following month, it boldly entered Philippine waters, brushing dangerously close to key maritime features and venturing within 34 nautical miles of Palawan. These repeated incursions aren't random. They're a calculated strategy by Beijing to tighten its grip on areas that are indisputably part of the Philippines' exclusive economic zone, EEZ. But if Beijing expected quiet compliance, it underestimated the resilience of the Philippines. Each time these provocations occur, the Philippine Coast Guard, PCG, steps up, tirelessly monitoring and challenging China's aggressive maneuvers. The recent deployment of the BRP Cabra is a vivid reminder that the Philippines will not stand idle while its sovereignty is threatened. This isn't just a matter of territory. It's about protecting vital resources and asserting the nation's rights in its own waters. China's actions in the South China Sea reflect its larger ambitions to dominate the region. But the Philippines isn't fighting this battle alone. The landmark 2016 Arbitral Tribunal ruling, which invalidated China's sweeping 9-line claims, remains a cornerstone in the fight for a rules-based international order. This ruling wasn't just a victory for the Philippines. It's a precedent for all nations that value freedom of navigation and respect for international law. As Beijing continues its relentless push to normalize its presence in contested waters, the global community must step in. China's repeated intrusions don't just undermine the Philippines' sovereignty, they destabilize the entire region. This is a moment for ASEAN and allied nations to present a united front, reminding the world that aggression has no place in a peaceful and cooperative Indo-Pacific. For the Philippines, this fight is deeply personal. The West Philippine Sea isn't just a patch of ocean. It's a lifeline for Filipino fishermen and a symbol of national pride and sovereignty. The PCG's unwavering stance against China's monster ship is a rallying cry, not just for Filipinos, but for the global community. No intimidation, no matter how overwhelming, can erase the Philippines' legal and historical rights in these waters. When the Chinese ship arrived at Scarborough Shoal last week, it was met with firm resistance. While China claimed its vessel was merely conducting patrols, the Philippines dismissed this narrative outright. These so-called patrols are a clear strategy by Beijing to assert dominance, establish a continuous presence, and quietly normalize its activities in disputed areas. Scarborough Shoal, known locally as Panatag Shoal, has long been a flashpoint in the West Philippine Sea. It lies well within the Philippines' exclusive economic zone, as defined by the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS. The 2016 Arbitral Tribunal ruling not only invalidated China's excessive maritime claims, but also reaffirmed the Philippines' fishing rights and sovereign entitlements in the region. China's recent moves are a stark reminder of its ambitions, but they also serve to galvanize national and international resolve. The Philippines isn't just reacting, it's standing firm, rooted in international law and backed by the global community. The presence of the monster ship may seem intimidating, but it cannot overshadow the legitimacy of the Philippines' claims. The Philippines stands firm in its belief that right is might, with the 2016 Arbitral Tribunal decision serving as its compass in navigating the stormy waters of the West Philippine Sea. China's relentless push to claim nearly the entire South China Sea, including areas that are undeniably part of the Philippines' exclusive economic zone, EEZ, goes far beyond territorial disputes. It's a calculated effort to dominate one of the most critical maritime corridors in the world. China's aggressive maneuvers in these waters are part of a larger strategy to establish control over the South China Sea, defying international law and dismissing the tribunal ruling that invalidated its sweeping territorial claims. Despite this, the resolve of the Philippines has not wavered. Filipino vessels face harassment. Chinese ships encroach on Philippine waters, but the government and its maritime forces continue to stand strong. Through a combination of diplomacy and growing naval capabilities, the Philippines signals that it is ready and willing to defend its rightful claims. However, the challenge is far too great to face alone. As tensions rise, it's critical that the international community steps in to support Manila in safeguarding peace and stability in the region. The world cannot afford to be swayed by China's carefully crafted narrative of events in the South China Sea. The Philippines has consistently acted as a responsible member of the global community, relying on diplomacy and multilateral frameworks to address disputes. Yet, this is not just the Philippines' fight. Regional and global powers must rally behind the 2016 tribunal ruling, which stands as the cornerstone of international law in the South China Sea. By doing so, they reaffirm their commitment to the rule of law and send a clear message to Beijing. Coercion and intimidation will not be tolerated. China's recent accusations that the Philippines is trying to drag the United States and other external powers into the South China Sea dispute are little more than a deflection, a weak attempt to shift focus away from its own aggressive behavior. Let's set the record straight. The Mutual Defense Treaty between the Philippines and the United States is a legitimate security agreement, not a tool for provocation or land grabbing, as China claims. Every sovereign nation has the right to seek international support when its territorial integrity is threatened. The involvement of the United States and other allies is not about creating conflict. It's about upholding international law, promoting stability, and ensuring the South China Sea remains an open and free maritime corridor. The Philippines has every right to defend its territory and assert its claims, backed by the global community. The world must continue to reject China's unlawful claims and aggressive actions, reinforcing the Philippines' legitimate rights under international law. True peace in the region can only be achieved through respect. Respect for the rule of law, adherence to international agreements, and a commitment to dialogue. Intimidation, coercion, and unilateral actions have no place in this equation. Together, the Philippines and its allies can chart a course for stability, proving that no nation, no matter how powerful, is above the law.